Hey everybody, I'm Brian, and I'd like to start this video by offering a confession of sorts. And the confession is that as a David Bowie fan, I'm a bit of a strange one. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I like pretty much everything that the guy's ever recorded. I've heard pretty much everything the guy's ever recorded. But when it comes to albums, there's only two that I totally love. And they're both rooted in the 90s, and the first is Outside, and the second is Earthling from 1997, his 21st album. And would you have a look at that cover? Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is the 2022 ISO release on 3 sides for the 48 minutes. I think the fourth side is etched. And it was written in 2.5 weeks. Now, it definitely has traces, or full on traces, should I say, of drum and bass, techno, industrial, jungle. There's a lot of rock on here as well. And sometimes this album has been derided as being the time when Bowie went from being an innovator to an imitator. But I tend to disagree in as much as, sure, these styles were around at the time, but Bowie takes them and makes them his own and extends the style. He's got his melodicism, he's got his beautiful songwriting, and it's David Bowie. It sounds like a David Bowie album. Now, Bowie has said that it was the most enjoyable set of musicians I've ever worked with. We just sort of went with it. And he had himself on vocals, guitar, and saxes, Reeves Gabrels on guitar and sampling, Zack Alford on live drums and the sampling of drums, Gail Ann Dorsey, who's basically played with everyone, she's on bass, Mark Plati on programming and keys, sorry I forgot your name wrong, and Mike Garson, the mercurial Mike Garson, on keyboards and piano. And he's the player who's worked on more projects with Bowie than anybody else. So let's have a look at it. Is it imitation or innovation? Let's find out. Let's begin by having a look at this reissue, and there's the cover, and it's a gatefold, so it opens on to this. Absolutely magnificent. And on the inside, we have some jarring imagery. Love the use of the purple colors there. It really looks like a Prince album more than anything else. And there's a gatefold going along there. And it's a unipack, which means you have to get your records from in here. I've already taken mine out because I can't stand the unipacks. The records themselves come on these beautiful inners. Again, there's that sort of sense of Prince iconography there. And there's the other one. And I think this is the one which has the etched, there we go, the etched side. And each of the labels are fairly individual and interesting. It plays great. Absolutely love it. It's got that big depth and the booming sound of the bass, which I really like, and the treble of the drums. It absolutely works beautifully. And for 48 minutes for 3 sides, what are we looking at? 16 minutes a side. It's kind of is good there too. You don't feel as though you're picking up the needle and flipping over the record every now and then. So let's move on to the songs themselves. And it begins with Little Speaker. And this is an absolute favorite of Bowie's for me. I adore this song. I flogged it when it came out. And it's an amazing song to start the album. It establishes quickly that we're into the drum and bass style. And speaking of which, the bass playing and the guitar here is out of this world. Now, I'm not sure how they did it, whether they played bass and then sampled and then worked on it and got it back in there, but it is absolutely stunning. And I particularly love the idea of the double time at the end of the chorus. It just works so well. Crazy lyrics, which use the 7 dwarves from Snow White, and even added an 8th dwarf, because I think you probably need 4 of those in the first verse, 4 of those in the second. But it's absolutely wonderful. And that vocal, the pining and the sending me so far away, so far away. I absolutely adore this. I've said absolutely about 5 times here, but it's the modality I want to work with. And then we come down to the next song, which is Looking for Satellites, which again is a perfect second song for the album. I really love the a cappella to start. Nowhere, shampoo, TV, combat, boyzone, slim tie, showdown, can't stop. And is this an example of Eno's oblique strategies at work? It slowly builds in its craziness and looking for satellites. it becomes insane at parts, particularly during the shredding solo towards the end. And it's full of edgy paranoia. It might seem a bit long, but I would say that if we labeled this as jazz fusion or jazz rock, we'd only just be getting started. And that then takes us into Battle for Britain, the letter. And immediately here we're introduced to these slabs of molten metal guitar chords, which shock and counterpoint and play against the intricate delicacies and speed of the drums in particular. And then the song, as we hit the verse, starts to float and lifts above. And I love the melody under my, the time do fly when it's in another pair of hands. And a loser I will be, for I've never been a winner in my life, which is kind of strange coming from Bowie. And that all builds us up to this wonderfully memorable chorus. There's a lightness to the guitar here, which is counterpointed, of course, by the chorus guitars, which are heavy. And so we've gone into that whole 90s aesthetic thing of weightlessness and power, soft and then loud. And how good is the start of that second verse when it comes down to Bowie just singing basically a cappella with the drums? It's absolutely gorgeous. And then to top it off, we get Mike Garson in with this incredibly demented piano solo. And can we believe this is Bowie at this stage? It's like he's playing tricks with my head. And I'm thinking, is this Bowie? Well, of course it is. He's groundbreaking, he's innovative, and he's rebellious. And he takes risks. Then we come right down in the mood for the start of 7 Years in Tibet, which was the fourth single on this album. It's a slower song. It's stalking and it's ominous. And I love that Farfisa style keyboard to begin with. And there's this dryness in Bowie's vocal, which has been totally stripped of any reverb. And it sounds like he's stuck in a vacuum somewhere. He's lacking oxygen, perhaps like Major Tom. And the lyrics are just insane. Are you okay? You've been shot in the head and I'm holding your brains. Holy. And those are just the first three lines. And then these slabs of crunch guitar return to the fake chorus. And interestingly enough, they go through a chorus without vocals and only come in with the vocals at the second chorus. And I wonder whether this was a misstep. Sometimes this album and some of these songs feel a little bit long to me. And I wonder whether we could have shortened that up. But it's Bowie. What am I talking about? Who am I to question him? Anyway, we jump right into Dead Man Walking, which really ups the quotient of the techno in this song, the third single off the album, and it stomps out of the gate so magnificently. Love some of these lyrics. Let me dance away, now I'm wiser than dreams, and I'm gone like I'm dancing on angels, and I'm gone through a crack in the past like a dead man walking. Another opportunity perhaps for a little bit of editing to get it a bit shorter, but it does give everybody the opportunity to shine through the guitars, the drum, the bass, and again, that psychotic piano playing of Mike Garson. Taking us up to Telling Lies, which was the first single. And this is an interesting thing because the remix of this single became the first ever downloadable song on the internet, apparently. Apparently, that was a 250,000 downloads or something like this. But it is the first song, strangely enough, that maybe I'm not totally in love with. And I don't think there's anything essentially wrong with the song. It's just the format has become a little bit procedural. We start off with drums and bass. Then we get into a light verse and the slabs of metal guitar come in halfway through. And so I'm getting a bit formulaic. So I wonder whether if this song had been pushed up towards the start of this album, that I might have liked it a little bit more. Having said that, the middle section, which comes down to the drums and the synth pads and the arpeggio keys, is beautiful, along with Bowie's chanting here. So it ends up being a pretty cool song. And I love some of these lyrics as well. Gorgeous girls are bound to meet to talk of stars and king and feet. Through the chromosomes of space and time, me, I'm fast like bad infection, gasping for my resurrection. Swear to me in times of war and stress. All over the place, but very Bowie. Next up is a great song. I love this one. The Last Thing You Should Do. What have you been doing to yourself is the last thing you should do. And we've got these airy keyboard pads, and Bowie's voice is almost like it's going directly in that dryness, that reverb-less sound directly into your ear. And then crazy, ravenous guitar lines appear in the soundscape. I'm Afraid of Americans was the fifth single off this album. 5 singles, my God, and was remixed by Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. And so we have the old innovator coming together with the new innovator, and I'm sure they're teaching a heap of stuff to each other along the way. This song has a bit of a Manchester vibe to it, like a band like Jesus Jones, for example. And it still has that predictable sort of sense of the quiet and the heavy in verse and the chorus. But in this case, when it goes heavy, it's got a great riff underpinning that chorus. I'm afraid of Americans. Da, da, da. It also strangely doesn't sound that much like Bowie's voice, which kind of elevates the song at this place in the album and makes it a bit more interesting. And I absolutely adore that section when it comes to just the strings at the end and Bowie intoning God is an American. Really cool song. The album finishes with Law, Earthlings on Fire, and right at this point, all bets are off. It's like he's blowing this thing up into smithereens and saying, you may have got used to the structure that I was using throughout this album, the lightness and the darkness, but here again, we're going to blow it to smithereens and you're never going to know what to expect. And I really like that from Bowie. He's always taking risks, he's rebelling, he's groundbreaking, and he surprises us. Having said that, I wonder if it might have been a little bit more effective if it had been moved into the middle of the album, quite like if you know the Church's Seance album, when Travel by Thought comes in there, it sort of cleanses the palate through deconstruction and destruction and disintegration and all those other words maybe associated better with The Cure. Anyway, got to champion the man. He's doing his own thing, and that's exciting. And I love the lyric that stands out to me. I don't want knowledge, I want certainty. Cool way to finish the album if you look at it in the right way. And so that takes us to the end of the album. And it's got me thinking about what it would have been like to have seen this performed live and been in the audience, my 30 years ago self being in the audience. Would I have been motivated to get up on the dance floor? Would I have been enthralled, entranced? Would it have worked for me? I kind of think it would have. Now, it's not a perfect album. It's a damn fine one. And it's probably not perfect specifically because of the formulaic procedural structure to some of these songs. But, 3 songs aside, you can still get an enormous amount of pleasure by dipping in and dipping out, getting the energy and the power and saying to the next side, I'll leave that for a little while later. I think it's a pretty great album, and I know I'd love to hear your comments down below, because I know people can say, well, it's not Diamond Dogs, it's not Ziggy Stardust, it's not Aladdin Sane, Hunky Dory, Hero, Low, Lodger, Scary Monsters, all those sorts of things. But I'd love to hear your comments about this album, and please, in the immortal words of Rod Stewart, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. Anyway, I got a lot of pleasure about it, of talking about this album. And remember that if music of any size, shape, style, substance, or satellites gives you pleasure, then I'm not going to argue with your opinion. Anyway, there are some videos up there if you'd like to check them out and dive a little bit deeper into this channel with me and build that relationship. But until next time, I hope you're doing really well, staying cool, and bye now.